Thousands of years ago, long before anyone had rockets or satellites, almost everyone was terrified of the ocean because they truly believed the Earth was as flat as a tabletop. And sailors whispered scary stories about what would happen if you sailed too far, fearing that their ships would tumble off the edge of the world into a dark pit full of giant monsters. This belief was so strong that for centuries people thought the sky was just a big dome or a bowl placed over the flat ground like a lid. But eventually, very observant people started noticing clues that made the flat Earth mystery unravel in a thrilling way. The first big clue came from watching ships sail away from the harbor, because if the world were truly flat, a ship would just get smaller and smaller until it looked like a tiny dot, but the whole ship would always remain visible. Yet that is not what happens at all. Instead, people noticed that the bottom of the ship disappears first, hidden by the water, and the very last thing you see is the top of the sails, which proved that the ship was actually moving over a curve, kind of like an ant walking over the top of a giant beach ball. Another huge hint came from looking up at the moon, because during a lunar eclipse, the Earth passes in front of the sun and casts a shadow on the moon, and ancient watchers realized that this shadow was always a perfect curve, and since the only shape that always makes a curved shadow is a sphere, they knew the ground beneath their feet had to be round. Even though it feels completely flat when you ride your bike or play soccer, that is simply because you are super tiny compared to the massive size of the planet, so you only see a tiny piece of the puzzle. But if you could zoom out, you would see the truth. If the Earth were actually flat like a pancake, the world would be a wild and dangerous place, because gravity pulls everything to the center, meaning that if you stood in the middle of a flat Earth, you would feel normal, but as you walked toward the edge, gravity would start pulling you sideways back toward the center. This would make walking to the edge feel like climbing a steeper and steeper mountain, and all the water in the oceans would rush to the center to form a giant bubble of water, leaving the edges of the world completely dry and impossible to live on. Furthermore, if the world were flat, you would be able to use a telescope to see all the way across the country, so you could stand in New York and see the Eiffel Tower in Paris. But we know this is impossible, because the curve of the Earth hides things that are far away. The most undeniable proof we have today comes from the brave astronauts who strapped themselves into rockets and blasted through the clouds to enter outer space. And when they looked back out of their windows, they didn't see a flat frisbee or a coin floating in the dark. They saw a beautiful glowing blue marble, a perfect sphere with swirling white clouds and blue oceans, and pilots fly planes around this sphere every single day, traveling in a straight line and eventually ending up right back where they started without ever hitting a wall of ice or falling off an edge. It is truly a sensational fact that right now you are standing on a gigantic ball that is spinning faster than a race car and zooming around the sun, yet gravity holds you down so gently that you don't even feel the speed, proving that while our eyes might trick us into seeing a flat ground, we are actually passengers on a magnificent round spaceship traveling through the universe.